constraint, is there? There is no restriction of time for Allah, nor space. He is now as He was. And the Blessed Prophet has said, if you were to cast a rope at the depths of the earth, surely it will arrive at Allah Jalla Jalaluhu. It is not a question of unity. It is not a question of union. It is a question of oneness. And how do we grow into that oneness? Imagine. Do you know why the Prophet has said, Man madahaka faqad dabahak? He who praises you has slaughtered you. The only reason he has said that is that when somebody praises us, we become pleased with our state. As soon as we become pleased with our state, we stagnate. That is the expression of shirk in its entirety. That we do not break the boundaries anymore. That within myself, I'm still the same. If 20 years ago, and now, after 20 years, if I am the same individual in my outlook, then the life of university, the life of Hosa, graduation, reciting of majlises, reading books, writing books, teaching students, contributing novel ideas, none of this have changed me in the real way that I am. There has been no change in me. I have been stagnant for the past 20 years, and that complacence with my state as I have been is the greatest expression of shirk. Why? Because the issue is one of oneness, and oneness can only be arrived when the I can be given up. It is the effacement of my personal identity, the destruction of my individuality. Allahu Akbar. It is a seed that cries out and says, I want to be a tree. We will say, it is well within your reach to become a tree, but you will not remain a seed anymore. That is the bottom line of what is happening. If you're pleased with being a seed, and you want to remain a seed and be a tree, there is mutual inconsistency here. In order for you to be a tree, you will have to give way to growth. You will have to burst forth, and the seed will begin to express itself as a tree, and the seed will become a tree. The whole question is of breaking the inner boundaries, the inner limits, and we want to work at that. And that is shirk. There is no partner to Allah. There can never be partner to Allah. There has been none other than Allah always in eternity. It is only me and you who are partners to Allah. One has to go before the other one can be reached. One of us has to go. Either Jalla Jalaluhu has to go so I remain, or I have to go so He remains. And He is Wahid al-Qahhar. He is one and overpowering. The only option is that I need to give way. And once I give way, and there is this constant renewal, constant breaking of inner boundaries, then there comes a point of arrival where I am no longer, it is but He. We go back to that final verse of Ali ibn Abi Talib's poetry, Salamullah alayhi. In which he states, وَفِي فَنَائِي فَنَا فَنَائِي وَفِي فَنَائِي وُجِدْتَ أَنْتَ. In my destruction or annihilation occurs an annihilation. We ask our Sufi masters, what does this mean? We ask our Urafa. They state, the first annihilation of Ali ibn Abi Talib, Salamullah alayhi, is him losing his will to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when he loses his will to Allah and discretion to Allah, he becomes Yadullah. He becomes Wajhullah. He becomes Lisanullah. When placed amongst orphans and widows, he becomes the Madhar of Rahmatullah. And when placed amongst the enemies and adversaries, he becomes the Qahariyatullah. But in the first effacement of Ali ibn Abi Talib, the first annihilation of Ali ibn Abi Talib, he loses his discretion, but he is aware that he is. That's the first annihilation. But Mawla states, وَفِي فَنَائِ فَنَا فَنَائِ. In my fana has occurred my fana. We ask them, what is this second fana? They say it is an impossibility. We say, nonetheless, what is the meaning of the second fana? They state the second fana is a stage where the individual loses all awareness of their own existence. So in the first fana, Ali knew he was, but he knew he was an instrument in the hand of Allah. In the second fana, Ali is no longer. He just does not exist. And that is why he says in the second fana, وَفِي فَنَائِي. In my second fana, when I looked, وُجِدْتَ أَنْتَ. Nothing but you were found. I was no longer. The expression of shirk, therefore, at its height, in principle, and in all truth and reality, is just me becoming complacent and pleased with my limited inner state. And that is unforgivable. Why? Because it is defying the principle of existence. The principle of existence is to break every boundary. But if I am myself and I am I, that I am stagnant, and that is not forgivable. Hasn't the Blessed Prophet said, in loss is he whose 2 days are the same, and cursed is one whose today is worse than his yesterday. We say to the Prophet, what can you possibly mean? There are 24 hours in a day. If I worshipped Allah 24 hours yesterday, and I worship Allah 24 hours today, I am at a loss? I am at a loss? There are no 23 hours. And if today I worship Allah for 23 hours, then I am mal'oon, the Prophet said. Mal'oon is the one whose today is worse than his yesterday. Mal'oon. And la'na means what? As we understand from the literal interpretation, la'na means to be driven away from mercy. Allah never drives anyone from mercy. Allah embraces with His merciful embrace even the pits of hell. Allahu Akbar. How can there be nothing but mercy within the pit of hell? We reach to the threshold of Zainul Abidin Salamullah alayhi. And he states, O Allah, even if you were to fling me in the pits of hell, I shall cry out in your love at that point and say to the inmates, how preoccupied I am with you. Even the raging pits of hell are an expression of Allah's mercy. No one can drive anyone out of the mercy of Allah except for the individual themselves. So we ask the Prophet of Allah, how can a person be mal'oon in such a case? The Prophet will say, because he has left growing. Make today's 1 minute better than yesterday's 24 hours. And that is not by taking the tasbih. That is by changing your inner self and your quality. As soon as your quality changes, your whole world changes with it. And hence the Prophet has said, a married man's sleep or salah of 2 rakat is better than a non-married person's 70 years of worship. Why? Because the quality has changed, the salah is still the same. Why has the Prophet said, I would rather sit in a gathering where there is beneficial discourse than fast for 70 years, stand long nights for 70 years. It is better than all of that. Why? Because through healthy discourse, through knowledge,